Today, I want to talk to you about what you need to bring with you when performing as a keyboardist or as a musician in general. You can find a checklist for this on my homepage or in the shop section of my blog, and I'll probably also make it available as a PDF so you can download it. But let's talk about it here anyway, and for a few items we'll go into more detail in separate videos. Personally, I always find it helpful to have a checklist, even if I don't always use it, but it's better than forgetting something. And in fact, it has happened to me during rehearsal that I forgot the most important USB cable, the one connecting my master keyboard to the computer. Thankfully, I was able to solve it in a somewhat tricky way because I had enough cables in my rack, so I just had to do without something else. So I managed to make it work, but it wasn't ideal. Let's start with point 1, the keyboard or keyboards. Of course, you have to bring those with you. I actually have a friend who once forgot his keyboard. Pretty funny story. They met up, had to wait for each other, started setting up a bit. The keyboards were supposed to be loaded last, waited for someone else, loaded that person's stuff, and then left the keyboard on the back seat. Really stupid. So he did bring it, but didn't transfer it into the bus. That was a bit unfortunate and a bit silly, and of course, it's annoying. Whether you should bring a spare keyboard, I think I already made a video about that. If I find it, I'll link it up here, and if I don't find it, we'll talk about it again. I've never brought a spare keyboard with me. I was on the road with Kronos for 12 years and never had a second keyboard with me. You could say it's a risk, but thankfully it always worked out well. Now I have 2 master keyboards because besides the Arturia, which you can see up there, I also have the SL with me, of course. And as a side note, you would really help me out by liking the video if you enjoy it. If you don't like it, then don't like it. And if you don't care, please like it anyway. Subscribe to the channel, leave lots of comments, and if you want to support me, I would really appreciate a channel membership. That way I can produce even more content, and all of this is very, very important to help the channel grow. Thank you all. The second important thing, of course, is the keyboard stand that you need to have with you. You can always find a replacement, but let's be honest, chairs or bar stools aren't really that great. So you should pack those, and if you need a holder for your iPad or microphone, then it makes sense to take those with you and have them on your checklist. The next step is cables. You need cables. Audio cable, MIDI cable, USB cable, power cable. That also includes power extension cords and power strips. And it's better to pack one too many than one too few, because those things can break and maybe another musician needs one, so you can help each other out. DI boxes are, of course, also part of it, although I think they come up later on the list. Right, DI boxes would be the next item on my list now. It's not a must, but the technicians will appreciate it if you already have something like that with you. Most keyboard players I know actually have a DI box with MIDI. Why a DI box? We can talk about that again, I'm not even sure anymore. I've made so many videos now, I'm not sure if we've already talked about it, but we'll go over it again because a DI box actually has more functions than just DI. We'll talk about that again later. What I just forgot to mention about the cables, power cables of course, so cold appliance plugs or power adapters if you need them. And if you use power adapters, always bring an extra one. For my MODX, for example, I immediately bought 2 additional power adapters. I have one in the case, one on the stand at home, and one in my spare kit where I keep my backup gear. If you play with in-ears, you should bring your headphones and your headphone amplifier. In my case, everything is wireless and I keep that in the rack. That means I always take my headphone amplifier with me anyway. The body pack is also in the rack. I have one pair of headphones in the rack and another in my case. So I always have 2 with me. I can only recommend having a spare as well. Then the question is, do you have a rack or do you have a case? As I said, I have the rack with the Mac Mini in it, and then I also have a case with accessories, and yeah, I just have to pack both of them. I shouldn't forget that. There's quite a lot in there. Pretty much all my cabling is already in there, so it's a bit easier for me not to forget anything when it comes to cables, except during rehearsals, because sometimes I use a different setup there. Cases, bags. Basically, you should of course have your keyboards properly stored in a case or a bag. For most keyboards, I have both. A bag for when I drive myself to rehearsals by car, and a case for when we're traveling by bus or trailer, because the keyboard is definitely better protected in a case in those situations. And lately there have been a few rain showers again. Consider whether you want to bring a rainproof cover that you can put over the keyboard after soundcheck, or even during the performance if it starts to rain. There have been a few videos about this recently, and even in our keyboard subgroup there was a video that wasn't very pleasant. Topic, backup. We just talked about this briefly, about the spare keyboard. If you're using a computer set up on the road, like I do, it doesn't hurt to have the entire set on a USB stick as well, because you can usually get hold of a computer pretty quickly somewhere. I always have my MacBook with me as a backup for the Mini in the rack. That's actually not a bad idea. It's a sensible thing to do. If you have a Kronos, make a backup. With the Fantom, MODX or Montage, that's possible too, of course. Make sure you also have your data with you, because you can actually get a replacement keyboard of that class pretty much anywhere. So it's doable to get a keyboard. The colleague upstairs actually got one too, and it works. worked. So that usually works out. Set list. Depending on where you keep it, iPad, paper and pen is never a bad idea anyway. You should always bring that along. You can always jot something down on it. If you make any changes, that's definitely something you should keep in mind. Something else that's important and always in my toolbox. Gaffer tape is always useful. I don't like the stuff. If you forget to take it off, it just gets sticky and that's never good. I also always carry a power bank with me. Charging cable for my iPad, of course, I just forgot to mention that earlier, but it belongs with the power adapters. You should always have a plug with you. I always have the power bank with me so I can pre-charge on the go in case I take the iPad along, because I never actually have it plugged in during live shows. So I set it up and then that's it. And even 10 years later, I still always carry a drum key in my pocket for the drummer. Now, just as a little side note, a towel is never a bad idea. Deodorant is never a bad idea, because after setting up, you might have sweated a bit, and then your fellow musicians or the fans will appreciate it if you don't smell too bad. A flashlight is definitely useful. Most people have one on their phone these days, so we don't bring a separate one. And spare batteries, in case you're using wireless gear, you can usually still buy them, but sometimes you're out so late that it's not possible anymore. And even at the next gas station, sometimes they don't have any. I've experienced that myself. Water and a small snack are also a good idea for the trip there, or depending on how far you have to travel home at night, an energy drink or a cola can help too. And what I also always bring with me from experience are headache tablets, ibuprofen, or something similar, and sometimes also something for colds and so on. So I actually have a whole little pack of that in my bag, although I have to admit I didn't pack it myself. My wife did, of course, because she does all that better, even for vacations, so thank you for that. Something else that's also really useful is an umbrella. You can always use one. We're back to the topic of rain again. As mentioned earlier, a change of clothes for after the sound check, after setting up, or whatever else. A brush certainly isn't a bad idea if you have more hair on your head than I do, and hand cream is also something you can always use. So those are the things I would recommend you always take with you. Tools like pliers and so on, soldering iron, drill, screwdriver, you name it, you can of course also bring along, but I don't do that as often anymore. I always have a multi-tool with me, basically a poor man's Leatherman and a screwdriver. That's not on the list right now. I'll add it later, I just realized. So when you see this video, the list will have been updated as well. And yes, if you have any other items you can recommend, I'd ask you to write them in the comments. What do you always take with you? What is important to you? What isn't important to you? And what have you maybe forgotten before? Maybe the colleague who I'm sure is embarrassed about it forgot the keyboard will also comment. And that's it. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like. I'd really appreciate it.